because they all have the same value. Therefore, there was a need for education.
Okay.
There was need for Ghana to reinforce or to come in with a new concept about how to educate our children.
Right.
So that they will also be useful citizens to the nation.
Right.
The reason why he gave free education. When he was agitating or when he was advocating for free education, those who have come today of age, whose parents were then in the opposition, said cocoa wasn't grown in the northern part of Ghana.
Right.
Therefore, we aren't going to use our money to educate the Northerners.
Right.
But now they've all benefited.
Mm-hmm.
They've come to realize that had they known what Kwame Nkrumah knew at that time, Ghana would have been on the same platter with the United States of America, or maybe one of the greatest nations on the face of the earth.
Dr. Nkrumah defined the aspirations of Africans thus: they desire to regain their independence and live in peace. They desire to use their freedom to create a union of African states on the continent, and thus neutralize the effects of the artificial boundaries imposed by imperial powers, and promote unity of action in the fields. These are Africa's ideals. Was his independence of Ghana's his meaningless speech bring about the independence of 17 colonies within 3 years of Ghana's?
Oh, yes. Many times people who probably don't understand where Kwame was coming from will always say, well, why should you even use a national life to equate to be meaningless, or it doesn't have value for him or whatever. Literally, that wasn't what Kwame Nkrumah intended saying at that moment. And that's not what he was saying. Kwame Nkrumah saw Africa in one body,
right,
a black face. That was the perception existing in the minds of the racist super military who have come to take over the continent. Therefore, if you liberate one house or one country out of the continent, out of the 53 nations that Europeans have come to cave, their problems or the problem of your neighbor is still going to be your problem.
Sure.
Kwame Nkrumah didn't see Ghana as a Ghanaian problem.
No.
He saw Ghana's problem as African problem. Hence the reason why he used those words. And if we do remember, Kwame Nkrumah within the shortest possible time was the sole person who helped to form the Ghana-Guinea-Mali, the union that he created among Africans within a short period of time.
Right.
It has taken African head of states, including their military, the juntas who have come to destroy African liberation movement, all these years, still talking about African unity.
Right.
We haven't got to nowhere. The man took only 1 year. After 1957, 1958, he was able to call a conference in Ghana, Accra, to unite 3 great nations, which didn't even speak the same language as Ghanaians were. Because in Ghana, we speak English.
Right.
Guinea and Mali speaks French.
Right.
The Kwame Nkrumah was able to win the heart and souls of these people to form a unity. That was how dynamic the man was.
He was. Nkrumah talked the talk and walked the walk. In his speech to the National Assembly on December 16, 1959, this is what he said: Africa is marching forward to freedom, and no power can halt her now. This reinforced his earlier warning to European powers that the independence of Ghana was meaningless unless it was linked up with the total liberation of the African continent. With an entire continent free from colonial domination, How do you think we are doing as far as unity is concerned with the African Union?
Well, at the moment, I would say we're doing poorly. Poorly because if it took a man just a year to unite 3 nations, even if it has to take us another 30 years, we're supposed to have at least unite 10 nations.
True.
We haven't been able to unite even one nation, besides what Kwame Nkrumah did.
Right.
And with the unfortunate situation on 24 February, that unity was dissolved.
True.
So the continent is faced with this unity, which I was talking about earlier on.
Right.
It is an artificial boundary that Europeans have come to set. Africa was once under kings, and the kings knew where their boundaries were up to.
True.
There was unity within the continent. Today, we don't have that kind of unity. When you talk about a Ghanaian and you refer a Nigerian to be a Ghanaian, this person is going to say, well, I'm not a Ghanaian. Why is he feeling ashamed to accept where he or she comes from?
Right.
Because we don't accept ourselves as being one.
True.
That's the problem we have today.
A legacy can be good or bad. It can be compassionate or evil. It can be positive or negative. It can be everlasting or enduring or short-lived and fleeting. Nkrumah's personal legacy is everlasting and enduring. His professional legacies are that of a visionary boldness in approach and fearless in causing the greatest paradigm shift in world history. How do you define the legacy of Dr. Nkrumah in the world stage?
How? I'm glad you've given me this opportunity to define Kwame Nkrumah's legacy on the world stage. Because I was thinking you were just going to deal with the Ghanaian stage alone. Well, I would define Kwame Nkrumah's legacy as a great liberator, a great Pan-Africanist, whose selfless effort today has produced an African-American president of our time. President Barack Obama's ascendancy to the highest executive office in the United States or in the world is not an accident. It was the effort of the Pan-Africanists who came before us and those who are still here.
Right.
Kwame Nkrumah was a Pan-Africanist, an engineer whose ideas and deeds helped to liberate our brothers and sisters who were colonized, subjected to racism in the United States.
Okay. The political situation in Africa today is heartening and at the same time disturbing. It is heartening to see so many new flags hosted in place of old. It is disturbing to see so many countries of varying sizes and at different levels of development, weak and in some cases almost helpless. If this terrible fragmentation is allowed to continue, it may be disastrous for all of us. Has the balkanization Dr. Nkrumah was vehemently opposed to worked in favor of our enemies?
Oh, yes. I mean, the political situation in Africa today, as we just described it, is not just disheartening or disturbing, but rather is very frightening. A continent which the United States can fit in 2 times, a continent which has inhabitants of 500 million, don't have a single vote in the United Nations Security Council. The same people who have come to colonize us are the people whose our internal and external securities are in their hands.
Right.
Just imagine if tomorrow they decide, within the 5 members or the 6 members in that little council, decide that they're going to split Africa into 10 pieces again, where will Africa be? Apart from the political ramifications, The economic disaster to Africa is what Africans don't seem to understand. Right. The reason why we need to unite now is because whatever is being produced in Nigeria could be sold to Ghana or to be sold to other people. Right. If we refine those things in Ghana or in Nigeria and add values to those things, or if we want to send it to overseas, we can have a unified market where we can dictate the price of goods that we're going to sell. Right. Africans don't have the clue about what is happening to them economically. We depend upon the West, even in the case of Ghana, for instance. Right. The government depends upon the West to budget his, to budget the people's economy. Right. We don't have physical discipline. But if we have a united front, right, we can check those in power. Because we are fragmented, we don't have anybody to check. In
answering the question why Nkrumah never dies,
that means what, 2 minutes?
Right. The late Francis Wutege had this to say, what Ghanaian and African youth would no doubt wish someone could explain to them is how, starting out with so little, Kwame Nkrumah was able to achieve so much, not simply for himself and his family, but for an entire enslaved race. Despite the distractions and the unending intrigues and dangers posed by his detractors, Kwame Nkrumah gave of himself as freely as one would pour water from a cup. And that is why Nkrumah can never die in the hearts and minds of conscious Africans everywhere. In your capacity as an executive of the CPP in North America, what can you tell Ghanaians about this celebration as it relates to the CPP and the future of the party as a government?
Well, before I go on, let me quote Malcolm X. Here, Malcolm X said, when someone in front of you makes a mistake, you should learn from their mistakes to benefit you. End of quote. We know Kwame Nkrumah was a human being. He made mistakes. Today, let Ghanaians forget about our mistakes. Let us forget about our political affiliations. Come together and celebrate the life of this great son of Africa, because he liberated us from the colonial yoke that was over our necks or on the neck of the continent for the past 100 years.
Professor Nkansah, we're running out of time, but I want to take this opportunity again to thank you. You've been great. I've learned a lot from you. But as a CPP here in the United States, when people want to contact you, how do they get in touch with you?
Oh, I'm glad you've given us a chance to introduce ourselves to the general public. If somebody wants to contact us in the USA, they can call on these numbers, 718-877-6387, 917-302-7487, or 641-548-5533. Again, 718-206-0111. You can get in touch with the CPP on any of these 4 numbers. And I thank you for hosting this program.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
It's my pleasure.
I appreciate it.
It's my pleasure.
All right.